Yeah, he is with Will Jawando at his election night party, I believe.
The Citizens and Culture Restaurant.
Okay,
Silver
perfect.
Spring.
Good to know the name of that. Flack,
That's right.
You're there, you're in the middle of it, and you probably heard us say that Will Jawando and Andrew Friedson are neck and neck, just 100 votes separating them right now.
Yeah, Leslie, people inside the room are following along on their phones just like you all are following along with those same results. And it just has the feeling of one of those races that we could be sticking with for a while tonight. You know, this is a race that Will Jawando told me earlier this afternoon really could shape Montgomery County for the next 10 to 15 years. Will Jawando, Andrew Friedson, both council members here in Montgomery County, both have been critical to the leadership of this county, and both of them expected a very, very tight race tonight, and that looks like what they are getting. Will Jawando told me his grassroots campaign had him feeling confident. He said they knocked on 50,000 doors, had 4,000 small donors. He said that's the type of grassroots support you really want in a campaign like this and a close race like this. He said the first line of his speech tonight was going to be, "Look what we did." And he said that was going to be the first line of his speech, regardless of the outcome, believing that they had the grassroots support to win, but also understanding that this race was very, very tight. As for Andrew Friedson, he also says they were working the different campaign and polling places across Montgomery County down to the wire. He said his own mom was working a 13-hour shift at one of those polling places, trying to convince voters who were undecided to come over to their side, knowing that every vote really was going to count in this election. He expects a close election. He says this election is critical to the future of Montgomery County. His campaign starting 1 year and 1 day ago. He believes that tonight it will end up being a victorious campaign, but really both candidates hours ago when I spoke to them knew that we could be in this position where we are right now. But honestly, guys, so close. You're talking about hundreds of votes, with a significant amount of those votes already having been counted. So many votes still to count. They both said it's those election day votes, the people who walked into those polling places we were at today and cast their ballots, that could end up being the difference in what could be a historically close race for the leadership of Montgomery County. A critical election here in Montgomery County, guys.
Critical election. We know that this role was term limited, which is why Mark Elrich was not able to run for a third time. And so then everybody got into this race, and then everybody's running for council roles as well. But boy, as you say, they clearly knew that this was going to be a very tight night and one to watch. And it is playing out just as they thought.
Yeah, that's right. If we could bring in our experts right now, because we want to talk about this one a bit more. We knew that this was going to be a close race, but this close? This early? Are we surprised at all?
I am not super surprised, but it's still early.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out that if either of the candidates who now have 37% of the vote win, let's say they win with 37, 38%, that still means more than 60% of the voters said they wanted somebody else.
Right. Right.
And one of the things, now this is not the kind of thing that's going to impact a general election, because in Montgomery County it tends to be blue, but it is the kind of thing that I think a nominee will have to be cognizant of. Yes, you won, but don't act like it was a mandate, because 60% of the people said they didn't want you. And so I hope that whoever wins comes out of this with an olive branch toward the other candidates who were in the race, because you're going to need those voters in November.
What separates, these candidates? A lot of them are alike. They've been on the council since 2018. A lot of the problems that the county's dealing with right now.
Yeah, they've been there for those problems.
In many ways, they've been responsible for
Right.
That's true.
That's a fair argument. Yeah, all of the kind of top three, Evan Glass, Will Jawando, and Andrew Friedson, all were elected to the Montgomery County Council in the same year. Two of those are at-large councilmen, and I think Friedson is District 1, but they're all in their 40s. They all are obviously Democrats to varying degrees on the progressive kind of definition. But looking into some of the details of their platforms, their priorities between the three of them, gosh, if you ask them a question about affordable housing or education, in almost every instance, you get two of them that agree with each other, and a third one who's just a little bit off to the side with a little bit of an extra, punch. And then you got another question, and that pair that agrees changes, but there always seems to be a pair of them that agree on something. So it is, again, generally difficult to find some daylight in primary candidates sometimes. This actually has me thinking tonight. We were talking a little bit earlier about how long it takes to count ranked choice votes.
Yeah.
But, there's an argument to be made that a race like this, is maybe the kind of race where ranked choice voting could make a difference. But again, alternative argument, when you have three candidates that look all the same, maybe ranked choice voting doesn't really help that much because you can't see the difference between them.
Well, they certainly all know the magnitude of what they'd be walking into. They've all served on the council. They've all had to make really tough budget decisions. This next county executive has to deal with huge cuts to the schools and
Yes.
what happens after that. Huge cuts in federal jobs to the constituency that lives here. Rising costs, right? Affordability. Everybody's talking about some of these major issues. It's not going to be a cakewalk for whoever wins this race.
Well, these are really big jobs with multi-billion-dollar budget responsibilities. So, yes, you're right. It's not going to be easy for any of them, and we haven't even begun to talk about the transportation stuff that is perennial and doesn't appear to be moving in a good direction either. The purple line.
Purple line.
Just
purple line.
Just
That's it.
Just say that.
Just say
That's
purple
enough.
line.
So yes, this is a real problem, but it's also an opportunity. If you can, sort of galvanize enough support around innovative ideas, I think voters will stick with you, and if you can get enough of the council to go along with it, then perhaps you'll be able to implement some things that can make a real difference. However, 3 sitting council members are running. There are 1, maybe 2 other council members that didn't run this time who see themselves as a future county executive, right? I think that whoever wins, they're going to have a difficult time with the council, in part because of this whole notion of personal ambition. We all have things that we want to do in our lives, and just like, there are 50 people on Capitol Hill who wake up every day and see a future president in the mirror, I think that there are people on the county council who want to be successful and want to see success for the county, but want to see it in ways that reflect best on them.
There might have been even more people who might have considered running from the council, given, as you say, their level of ambition. This is not a group of people who just want to sit and serve. They want to do more.
And I'm not knocking ambition. We all have it. I think it's great. But let's just be clear on what the implications of that could be for policy decisions down the line.
Do you think that's why Elbridge got a lot of pushback in this last term because of these ambitious council members?
Well, listen, I think that's the number one reason, quite frankly. Think about it.
But he also couldn't run for another term.
Right, yeah. Well, it's easy to say no to somebody.
That's what I'm saying,
So,
I want your job,
so no. I think there's certainly some of it, and I get it. It makes sense. And by the way, on a national level, wait until after the November elections. Our current president is going to hear a lot of people from his own party saying no. And part of that is because they know he can't hurt them anymore, and that they have their own ambitions that they need to sort of carve out some space. You were talking earlier about daylight between the candidates. Well, one of the ways to do that is to take on the leader.
Well, we talk about affordability a lot. We've heard this, aside from Trump, I'm going to fight Trump, also this affordability. Friedson talked about fiscal responsibility. Jawando talked about housing affordability. So for voters, what stands out truly when you really can't talk about policy as much? How do you cut through the noise?
I think likability has a great deal to play here. So if you were one of the maybe lucky voters that got a candidate visit at your house, or you were able to go to some sort of public event or volunteer for the campaign, that obviously will help. Advertising will help a little bit, right? Even though it's not a face-to-face interaction, one of the positive consequences of us watching TV the way that we do is we feel that we're close to a candidate, right? After seeing them over and over again, we feel like we get to know them because we start to understand, remember what they're going to say. It feels like we can anticipate what they're going to say. And so we feel a bit more of a connection there. You know, what is kind of funny, going back to what Michael said, that like all three of these guys are sitting councilmen, and all of them are very loudly decrying the state of Maryland, or I'm sorry, of Montgomery County. I don't hear one of them saying, sorry for my role in that, you know? And I mean, they certainly have different degrees of responsibility, I'm sure, on the margins, but it does truly like say something interesting about that council and maybe the Democratic Party locally in Montgomery County, that three Democrats who otherwise appear to be pretty close on a lot of things couldn't consolidate a choice.
Well,